Hello. In this presentation, I am going to talk about the mental representations that are used in text comprehension and production. I will refer to 5 key notions that constitute the basis for linguistic processing, namely concepts, mental models, schemas, frames and scripts. During my presentation, I will also draw relationships among these concepts to help develop a wide framework that will office as a departing stage in the analysis of spoken genres. Let me begin by the most basic notion, the concept. Though the term is often taken for granted, what do we mean in language studies when we refer to the notion of concept? Well, according to Bax, a concept is the most basic mental entity. Notice the word choice entity in the definition provided. We are referring to an abstract object that corresponds to a mental representation that we use to guide our actions. What is interesting to note is that whenever we think of a concept, we draw on certain core characteristics which we think are central to our concept. So, let us consider the example of a class at university. In any class, there is someone who teaches and someone who learns, a teacher and a student. But there are other characteristics of a class at university that are evoked by the concept, such as the fact that there are theoretical developments conveyed in oral presentations. Probably this class you are listening to evokes through its prototypical features some of the characteristics you associate with a class. Yet, this class contains features which are new to you, to the concept that you have of a class. What I mean to say is that concepts are fuzzy, as Bax describes them, since they operate with prototypes, that is, examples that fit all features upon which we compare and contrast each new item. Prototypes, then, are a clear example of a concept these examples contain all the features that we would associate with a concept. So, this class is similar in many ways to the prototype of a class at university you have in mind. Yet, it differs in its medium, among other features. The notion of concepts as prototypical is important because we use this same operation with texts whenever we encounter a text. We probably evaluate it upon prototypical concepts of a genre or another, and then we categorize it as being close to our mental idea of a genre or different from it. The fact that mental prototypes of genres are fuzzy allows for the crucial aspect of discourse construction and understanding, flexibility. As Bax says, it is likely that we draw on certain genre prototypes as a means of assisting our interpretation of the class and function of texts, as a key part of our interpretation processes. Let me pass on to the second notion of relevance for our analysis. Mental models are a combination of concepts forming larger conceptual structures. In other words, we refer to mental models when we talk about a number of interconnected concepts. These can be prototypical or abstract entities. For example, a physical one, as is the case with the mental model of a school, includes interrelated concepts such as students, teachers, head teachers, classrooms, books, and so on. Conversely, if we consider the mental model of a teacher role, a number of interconnected concepts of a more abstract nature comes to our mind, such as school rules, institutional regulations, teacher training, etc. Surprisingly, mental models and concepts operate in intricate ways. As Bax says, as we use them in everyday behavior and language use. Yet, we seem to be very efficient at using them. Note that we understand and negotiate our way around the real world. Also, we understand and produce texts with them. Now, another important notion in our analysis, is the notion of schemas or schemata. You can use both plurals. Schemas are clusters of mental concepts which we draw in order to interpret the world around us and also to interpret language. It is a set of interrelated features we associate with an entity or concept that helps us quickly and efficiently understand language and produce it so that others can understand it. In brief, schemas are well-integrated chunks of knowledge about the world, events, people, and actions, which we all possess and use to interpret events and texts. Like mental models, they are conceptual or mental structures that we develop through experience. This will allow us to interpret the world and share the interpretation with others. The notion of schema is similar to the notion of mental model. The difference lies in the ways in which concepts relate. In the case of schema, the relationship among concepts is a more general association of ideas, while in the case of a mental model, it includes a more complex relationship between various concepts. Let us take the example of the school again, so as to tell you the difference. While in the case of a schema of a school, we would relate it in a general way, the concept of teacher and student. Conversely, a mental model involves understanding in a more complex way how a school is structured, organized, and operated, and how teachers and students behave within it. According to schema theorists, there are different kinds of schemas. Among them, the distinction between frame and script is important for our analysis of the oral language. Both frames and scripts are two types of information stored in our brains. The difference between them lies in the fact that a frame is a non-sequential set of concepts that are related among them. In contrast, a script is a conventional sequence of activities. It is a socio-culturally defined mental protocol for negotiating or understanding a situation. An important aspect of scripts is that we share an understanding of how the sequence will unfold with the people around. So if we consider the example of a school and I ask you, what is a school? You're likely to refer to frames and scripts to be able to negotiate an understanding of the concept of the school. In your response, you will be referring to teachers, students, and classrooms in a general way, so you will be referring to your frame of a school. Some of you might think of students first, others of the playground first, others of teachers. This is a frame. If I asked you, what is the school day like? You're likely to refer to a script. You know that the agents involved, that is teachers, students, sometimes parents, will gather for assembly at the sound of the bell. Then they will form rows and the head teacher will greet students and everyone will sing a national song such as the hymn to our national flag. Then the students will be led into their classrooms and so on. This is a sequence of events which is more or less shared by everyone. It is a script then. Obviously, this sequence may differ slightly, since scripts differ slightly from one person to another, from one culture to another. Yet, sharedness is what distinguishes scripts from frames. Scripts are shared by people. Yet, both types of schema are necessary to operate with language in comprehension and production in the real world. All in all, let me draw a synthesis by saying that on the one hand, our mental schemas, in particular frames, will set up expectations about any new situation based on the previous knowledge about the world, actions, people and events that we have built. On the other hand, scripts will help us predict what will happen next. All this helps us understand and operate effectively in the world and helps us use language. In this respect, Field categorizes schemas as divided into 3 different types when considering how listeners or readers process language information. Field refers firstly to world knowledge, that is, the previous knowledge of a speaker or writer, including encyclopedic, as well as world's knowledge. Frames and scripts would be part of this type of knowledge. They would be part of world knowledge schemas. Secondly, he refers to the knowledge built up from the text so far, that is, the meaning representation that develops as you listen or read. The focus, then, in this type of schema is placed on models of listening and reading that will develop further in future lessons when we work with listening comprehension. Thirdly, Field refers to text schema, that is, the previous experience that we hold with the type of text, namely structure and form. Field's ideas in this last category, will be of relevance when we discuss the notion of genre, a concept we will examine in depth in the second section of our class this week.